The most dangerous place you can be is almost committed. Not fully in, not fully out, almost. Because almost gives you just enough to avoid confronting the fact that you have not really decided yet. Most people think they are fully committed without realizing they're doing a half measure without even knowing it. Here's the sneaky thing, the half measure feels like participation. So it feels and makes your mind think that you're in the game. But in reality, it's distracting from the fact that you haven't fully committed yet. And the brutal truth is that the half measure is actually costing you more in the long run than if you had just went in from the jump all in. I wish I could literally teleport the strawberry to you because it's so perfect and sweet and delicious. Just one sec. But first, hi soul friend, I'm Aisha. I'm a meditation teacher, writer, and the host of this podcast, Monsoon Season. This podcast is all about culture, consciousness, and the courage it takes to be seen. I would love it if you would like and comment something that struck you in this episode. And I also wanted to share that I go much deeper on Substack. So if you're interested in getting cozier, join my newsletter and I will make sure to link it in the description box below. Let's get into it, friends. No half measures is not something I coined personally, but comes from one of the greatest TV series ever written for television, Breaking Bad. It is said by Mike, who plays a fixer type of character to the main character, Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston. So in this scene, Mike is sharing this story about how when he used to be a beat cop, he would get called for a lot of domestic violence disturbances. And he basically describes this one couple that he would constantly visit with his partner. And this one time, he was really close to ending this man's life because he was just so disturbed by how he was treating his wife. And he had this opportunity, but he decided to give him mercy. And so this man goes back to his wife, and 2 weeks later, his wife unfortunately passes. What Mike says at the end of sharing that story is what haunts me. He says that that incident made it clear to him that he will never do a half measure again. He will always fully go all in and take care of business because he thinks that the cost of doing a half measure is too high. This becomes like this running theme in the entire series. And if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, I was late to the party. I just saw it for the first time last year and blew my mind. It is worth a watch and a rewatch. It's one of those shows that really has so many amazing cultural themes. But this no half measure thing has stayed with me since the series has ended and beyond. I have really thought about no half measure over and over again. And fun fact, Bryan Cranston actually got no half measure tattooed on him when they wrapped the show. Aside from this really dark monologue and story, what no half measure means to me is do not half-ass it. If you are going to decide that you're going after something, whether it's your dream, whether it is a relationship, whether it is a business venture, entrepreneurship, content creation, whatever it is, you must go in fully and fully be committed in order for it to actually work. Going half measure into anything comes at too high a cost. The crazy thing is sometimes we're actually unconscious of the fact that we are going in half measure. For 11 years, I was trying to go full-time in entrepreneurship and really going after my dreams, and I was constantly failing for 11 years. So for many years, every mistake I was making was a half measure. And so in this episode, I want to break down 12 mistakes that I made that I wish I could avoid it, and I am passing them on to you in the hopes that you save a lot of time, energy, and just life force by not making these half measure mistakes. So the first mistake is one that I think a lot of people struggle with, which is I didn't know how to package my story and turn it into value for a stranger. So something I commonly would do was either just water down my story into something really, really generic because I thought maybe that would cast a wider net for more people, or I would be too specific so that it was so granular that someone who is a stranger just couldn't really drop into my world. So something that I have done now is really think about every piece of content that I'm creating and putting out in the world. I'm thinking about discoverability. Wow, that's a hard word to say. Discoverability, and am I telling a story that is open and outward facing, or am I telling a story that's inward? And a lot of the times I will look at things that I'm posting in hindsight and realize, wow, like that was something that was inward facing, and it doesn't have the opportunity to like have breadth and the breadth that is needed for other people on the internet to really catch the story or relate to it, because it is inward facing, if that makes sense. So this is a really big one. Learning how to package your story and make it really digestible is such a big part of the journey, and it takes years to do that. Something I've suggested to clients in the past is to sit down and record yourself on your phone, hit record, grab a cup of coffee, and just talk. Say what your story is, share your hero's journey, and play it back and watch it back. And it might really hurt to watch it back, but that is where the magic happens. And then think about what you can cut out and what really mattered in that story. And if you feel like you're a little too critical of yourself, maybe share it with someone you really trust to help give you that feedback, and then keep recording and re-recording your hero's journey and your story until you get it down to like a 60-second thing. It's not to do it as a short form thing, but it is to distill your story down to something that is clear and concise. Clarity is everything. Clear is kind, and we need to do that and rehearse that with our stories as well. The second half measure mistake I made is I made it about myself, and it's not about me. And this is a really, really big one that I have made countless times, and I see so many people doing online. There's so many layers to this. So even when you're creating content, I know so many people who hate creating, and it's because they are in their own heads. It's all about their fear, their doubts, their anxiety, versus thinking, if I create this content, this piece of content might unlock something for someone listening, or this will be an act of service for someone. So like, to me, it's not even about necessarily what you're saying and how you're projecting yourself, but really getting our heads out of our own asses and like realizing that it is not always about us. It is not about you. It is not about me. It is, how can I be as vulnerable and authentic as possible so that someone gets something from this share? And that's what art does, and that's what expression does. It's medicine for people, and it is not meant to be hoarded or pointed towards us. I heard this metaphor recently that I'm absolutely obsessed with that's perfect to tie into this. And it was this story of, if you're on a bus and someone has a migraine and you have Excedrin or Advil in your bag, you have to offer it to the person that has a headache and needs help. Like, you wouldn't just hoard that thing and that medicine to yourself. And I think that's such an important thing to remind ourselves when we are creating and when we are building an offer in the world is that it is an offering. It is literally in the name. It is an offer for someone else. And it is not about you. It is not about me. It is about the person that it is destined for. Another half measure is I didn't post consistently to see the karma ripen. The amount of times I've been inconsistent, straight to jail. I mean, I have failed at consistency so often because I would post for a little bit for a few weeks and I'd have this like burst of motivation and excitement about a new idea, and I would post and then I would just like look at the metrics and be like, wow, like this is performing so badly, and I would just dip before anything. And I now have a very, very firm rule that if I'm going to do anything, I have to be fully committed for a minimum of 6 months. 6 months is just the bare minimum of full commitment for you to be able to even get data and research and information and intel that tells you anything. If you have been doing things for less than 6 months, then there is really nothing to talk about. Consistency is also a place where a lot of our stories and a lot of the blocks and the blind spots are really coming. So really look into that as much as you can and really ask yourself, like, why haven't you been consistent? What has prevented you from being consistent? And I just encourage you, if you can, to stick to at least a minimum of 6 months. Stop creating on platforms and on mediums you hate. I have been feeling for the last 2 years that I should only focus on long form content. So podcasts, YouTube, and Substack. But I kept ignoring that and staying really active on Instagram and focusing on making short form and Instagram reels constantly because I had the largest audience at that time and the most amount of people who knew me, like were friends with me on Instagram. And so I just kept going and pushing Instagram so much. And even though my intuition was saying, go deeper, go for long form, you don't like making short form content, you don't like being on Instagram, why are you on it? And just in the last 7 to 8 months, I have really rearranged and reprioritized and focused on Substack and YouTube and the podcast. And it has just making that hierarchical change and shift and cutting the fat off. Like I tried for a little bit doing LinkedIn and fucking hated it so much. And I kept hearing like, people are not on LinkedIn. You need to like optimize LinkedIn because this is like the secret sauce that like works. What works is using platforms and creating the type of content on the creative medium that feels the best. For me, talking to camera and yapping for long periods of time and really going deep and focusing on depth is what I love to do. So it has been a huge disservice, and I kind of am kicking myself a little bit thinking about how much further along I would be and how much bigger my community would be if I had just stuck to doing platforms and styles of content that I genuinely love. And this, I want you to really look at what you're creating and think about what it is that you hate creating and what it is that you love. For me, I am not a vlog girl. I have tried it and I love a cinematic vlog, but it is not my thing. And I tried so hard to do vlogs or to do certain fast cut style reels, and it's just not something I enjoy. And the hatred that we have and the animosity we have towards doing certain things, it permeates in our message, it permeates in our content. So I really encourage you to audit what platforms are you on currently, what styles are you doing. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you are doing like, long form written articles, but you actually really prefer just making carousels and making really cool graphic carousels that you could use on Pinterest and on Instagram or what have you. Like, just really be honest about what it is you like and where your skills naturally flow into. And like leaning into that is such a hack, because once you are creating in mediums and in spaces that you enjoy, then the consistency stuff gets easier and showing up gets easier. Low engagement is not low impact. Please listen to me when I tell you this. If you have low engagement on something, it does not mean shit. It used to, maybe, and I think we've been conditioned to believe that the likes and the views and the metrics mean something, but they are empty of a nature. They don't mean anything in terms of the actual value you're providing. There have been countless times where I have posted something and it got crickets, and then randomly in conversations with people, someone will mention something that I like. Someone will literally quote something I said in a piece of content, or refer to a piece of content that I made that had zero engagement. And I was just like, whoa, I had no idea that this person thought about it or got something out of it and got value from it. And this has happened time and time again. And we have to remind ourselves, everyone has different consuming styles, and some people are just casually, leisurely looking at your content, but it's making an impact in a different way, or maybe it gets tucked away in a part of their subconscious mind, and then when something happens, there it goes, it aligns and clicks, and they come back to it in a different moment. Content and metrics is not always indicative of like how it's actually moved a person's heart. Yeah, just like know that moving someone's heart is not always tracked in the metrics, and that's just because the human condition is something that we can't capture and quantify in any way. Stop hoarding your ideas. You actually do not know what your best idea is. I've always made a promise to myself that I would be filming and sharing one podcast episode every week. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was feeling very, very down. And I just felt like the episode I recorded was just not it and was not really special. And there was no like really wow factor about it, but I stuck to the plan and I posted it, and it is the very video that has gone viral on my channel and has opened up the world of possibilities for me. Like, I didn't ever imagine getting 24,000 views on a YouTube podcast episode, and got so many people to subscribe to the channel just through that episode that I was this close to never posting. The best idea you have is not actually something that you can judge. Once you create and you put into the world, it is on the audience and the person who is receiving this gift of creativity, of transmission of your idea. They are the ones who are there to judge and decide what is the best, what's not. Just like an artist can't decide, oh, this is my best song. No, like Mariah Carey, it doesn't matter what her favorite song is, her favorite song, but the best song in her catalog is clearly We Belong Together. It's clearly already decided by the listener, by the audiences, by the charts, by the metrics. That's when the metrics do the talking for us. Whew. So I say all that to say, don't hoard your ideas. Treat them as neutrally as possible and just get them out of your system. The next half measure is a little bit nuanced, and it's the idea that feelings are not facts. So many times I would just not show up and not create because I didn't feel like it, because of the the negative self-talk or because of the self-sabotage narrative that was going on in my head. And we have to remember when we are pursuing things that our feelings are not the same as the integrity that we bring into our work. And when I've been able to really compartmentalize that I can feel a certain way, but like in order to really build my integrity and my inner trust, I will show up like differently and to show up anyway, despite how I feel. And like I used with the video that really popped off, that was a perfect example of I was not feeling it, but I showed up and I focused on building that inner integrity, and that is what carried me through. And I think at the end of the day, that's what transmitted that message so authentically and honestly, and ended up resonating with a lot of people. Start talking to the camera like you are FaceTiming a friend. I have recorded myself and watched playback of myself for hours and hours and hours. I have over 10,000 plus, I've never kept track, but 10,000 plus hours of practice. I've mastered the talking to camera thing, and it's because I've practiced it, and it does come naturally to me to a certain degree, but being able to translate my personality on camera has been a huge learning curve. I would record myself and then watch playback and be like, I cannot believe I sound like that. That's not how I sound. There was always like this little tinge of performance still happening. And just recently this year, I've really felt more relaxed on camera because I am not talking to a camera. I'm not talking to my phone. I am talking through the camera and talking as if I am FaceTiming my dearest friend. And that feeling is what I try to show up with when I'm recording. And that has shifted a lot for me, because when we're just talking to this innate object, our phone, right, this brick, it feels like there is a little bit of this natural block that will come up. But if we really envision that this is a person that we are trying to just tell a message to, that we truly love and we care about, and there's a different energy that comes from behind the eyes and behind the throat that really permeates the lens. And yeah, and if you are not sure exactly how you even sound or look when you're being authentic, something I used to do is I would record myself like on my laptop or a second phone when I was actually talking to a friend. And I would kind of just place this hidden camera, and that would capture my little peccadillos, my nuances, and then I realized I was like, wow, like that is me. Like I'm a lot more quirky, I'm a lot more relaxed, and I'm more playful, and all of those little elements I only got to see when we actually see and research how we behave. And so I just really recommend doing a hidden camera experiment when you're talking to your best friend, and using that as a means of how to embody and show up in your next video. Your past skills are not baggage, they are actually an unfair advantage. For the longest time, I did not take advantage of the skills that I have had the privilege of being part of in my past, and all the different amazing things I've gotten to do. And I really encourage you to investigate all the skills and jobs and odd jobs that you've done, and how you can use those skills to bring that freshness into your current content stream or your business right now. I'll give you two examples. So I studied theater in college, and I would write plays, I would write one-woman shows and monologues, and being on stage was my passion, and being in character was a passion of mine. Breaking down a character and breaking down motivations for characters was a huge part of what I did in college and when I was acting and directing and playwriting. And I sometimes forget that storytelling is what I really crave, and storytelling in community. And so now I'm really using that past knowledge and information and the experiences I've had as a theater kid and bringing that in to my business. And so how that looks is like, now I'm centering my whole business around building community and building a collective. And that's authentic to me, because that's why I love theater so much, is storytelling and the collective nature of things and building with a community. And the storytelling aspect, I am someone who is comfortable on stage, on camera, and I don't know why for so long I was hiding and doing trends and fucking things that like other people were doing, because I was just so focused on what was working for other people versus really looking at what I naturally am good at and using that to my advantage. I know that there are not a lot of people who can sit in front of a camera and talk for an hour straight or 90 minutes straight and still feel engaged and still be able to like have the energy and the endurance. And that comes from my theater days and the endurance that I learned about storytelling and all of that stuff. So I have not used that to my fullest advantage until recently, until I've really fully stepped in and been like, Aisha, you know how to do this. And we all have those skills. I also come from a background for 15 years, I worked in the beauty industry, in social media marketing and brand storytelling and brand creative. When it came to like building my own brand and building my own personal brand, I was crumbling, because it's so much easier to do it for other brands and other people. But when I'm trying to build my own story, all of my little blind spots catch me and stop me from really being clear about what I'm trying to say. So that has been another thing where I'm now using my experience in social media marketing and tapping into that. And so small ways I'm doing that right now is really going back to my social media manager, social media director days, and going through the analytics of all of my channels and studying what keywords, what people are gravitating towards, and then trying to, predict content and things and patterns that I'm noticing in my audience and what types of problems they're facing, so that I can help create more podcast episodes to serve them. That is directly linked to what I did as a social media director at my past jobs. I would go behind the analytics of all of the social media channels, and I would do weekly, monthly, and quarterly reports. And so now I'm applying it to myself. We all have not just one, but multiple skills that we've learned from past jobs or past experiences, internships. And to figure out and study what we can apply to our current situation is going to be such a provocatively game-changing move. This half measure is very, very clear, short, and concise, and it is that I used to use AI to validate ideas, and now I use my intuition. And how this has manifested is, if I have two ideas and one is really strategic and pragmatic and another idea is just like a wild card and one that I'm just really excited about, I'll feed it into AI, and then it will say like, oh, strategy wise and business wise, you should go with the, this option A that's safer and more logical. And it's like throwing a bucket of water on my intuition. If my intuition is like, this idea is a little scary and a little dangerous and exciting, then I want to encourage you to follow that bliss. Like, follow that fire and follow that idea and trust your intuition more than you trust AI, because AI is just a tool. So do not let it make your decisions for you when it comes to your creativity. Another half measure is branding will not save you, your message will. I spent thousands of dollars hiring graphic designers and studios to help me figure out my branding. I also did my own branding and redone my branding, logo, icons, brand colors, Pantones, typography and fonts and different templates for graphics over and over and over. I cannot even tell you how many times I've redone my branding, only to find out that I have been avoiding just showing up and sharing my message. And this year has been like really transformative in cutting out the bullshit with the branding. It's hard for me because I come from a branding background and creative director background. So like, I really value aesthetic and I value the beauty of aesthetics and the refinement and the skill that is needed to have really great branding. And I appreciate great branding from other creators and other businesses and other brands. But when you are in the beginning phase and really in the deep end, just treading water and keeping your head above drowning, like, branding is such a sneaky way for us to drown ourselves and us to leak energy. And I say this just from like truly lived experience. Like, do not worry about branding yet. If you are in the beginning, focus on the message, focus on your storytelling, focus on how you show up and the consistency and the branding stuff. There will be a time and place when it is actually conducive and supportive to the business and to the ideas and the projects. But even now, as I'm starting to get more traction and build an audience, only going to focus on branding later down the line when I have the disposable income and the funds to actually support it, because it is expensive and it takes up way too much time and energy. And the lie I told myself for so many years is that people will not take me seriously unless I have a really beautiful, polished brand. And the truth is, people will take you seriously if you take yourself seriously. The last half measure I want to share is what you consume before you create becomes you. Consuming doom scrolling and spending hours and hours taking in other people's content and creativity is a toxic poison to your creative process. It is going to dilute your intuition. It's going to dilute your transmission of your message. You're going to be chasing this invisible thing. It is so important to keep our mind and our hearts clean when we are in that creative state. And so I really suggest protecting, blocking down those blocks of time or those little bursts of time where you can create and build your business. And especially make sure that those times are not happening right after having consumed a lot of things. I recently did this 7-day challenge where I realized I was struggling so hard to record and create content because I had so much in my system, in my operating system, and we are consuming more content, as we know, than any generation that has ever lived before us. And I actually took it upon myself to start a 7-day challenge where I stopped consuming any content, no podcasts, no YouTube, no social media. And just that 7-day reset really brought so much more groundedness and clarity into my mind and helped me really clear out any brain fog that I was feeling. A lot of the times our brain fog or our binary thinking of things and our fear of making decisions or feeling paralyzed by choice is coming from the external noise. Turning off the faucet of consumption is a really beautiful way to do that, and spending more time in boredom and stillness and meditation is a beautiful addition. But we have to subtract, we have to turn off that valve of consumption in order to get to that heightened creative state. Remember that when we're building a personal brand and business, it is about sharing and communicating a message externally. So if our internal communication is all out of whack, that external communication is really going to suffer. So that's why really getting our meditation practice and our inner communication back is going to ripple out into everything that we do externally. And I don't think we talk about that enough. So if you haven't tried it yet, maybe it's time to do a 7-day no consumption challenge and see how that really affects and bleeds into the work that you're creating. Last thing I want to leave you with is that the moment you go full measure, full capacity, full honesty, full vulnerability, full consistency, full honesty, everything changes. And I don't mean that in an immediate sense. What I mean by that is things start to compound over time. And remember, I'm just here to lovingly remind you to not waste your time with half measures.